Hey everyone, we are at the Win in Las Vegas for some live poker action, and today anything can happen. Will we hit the big hands or get outplayed? Let's find out. I got aces and two players have limp. I decide to bet 25 and both players call. The flop is 8-9-3 rainbow and I make a continuation bet of $50. Only one of the two opponents call that bet. Here the player could have a 9, an 8 or a straight draw like Jack 10 or 5-6. The turn is an ace giving me a set. I bet small, only $50 since I don't want him to fold an 8 or a 9 and that ace could scare him a lot. Besides, he only has $200 more and I can easily win it on the river. The player calls again. The river is a jack, so I go all in for $200, which is what he has left, but this time he falls. It's the same because I couldn't win it all, but the ace and the jack that came out make it very difficult for the opponent to call me with a hand like ace 8 or 9-10. Now I'm dealt king 10 and I bet 25 after two players limp to 5. Only one of them calls and we go to the flop heads up. The flop is jack 10 king, giving me two pair. I bet $35 and the player calls. He's drunk and wanted to raise, but he makes a mistake and only calls. The turn is a 5 and my opponent goes all in for $495. Against a player who's been drinking, I can't fold, so I call. Unfortunately, my opponent shows queen 9 and had flop the straight. The river is a jack and I lose this hand to a player who, after winning this hand, gathers his chips and leaves, eliminating any chance of trying to win those chips back in another hand against him. No worries, let's move on to the next hand. In this hand I was going to grab another $300 in chips, but I saw that I was in the cutoff. When you are on the bottom or in the cutoff, you always want to be at the table because they are the best positions since you have position over the other players. I'm dealt 9-9, a very good hand. I decided to open to 15 and the player in the big blind raised to 60. I obviously called. The flop came king 9-5 with two hearts. The player, who is another pro, made a continuation bet of $65 and I had two options, call or go all in. I could also raise, but my raise would be to about $225, leaving me with about $400 more behind, which is why it's better to go all in directly. This time, that's what I did. I went all in for $630 and the player, after thinking about it for a bit, called. The turn is an ace of clubs, the river a 6 of hearts, I saw my set of 9s and I win. He most likely had ace king. In this hand, the straddle is on. One player limps to 10 and I raise to 35. Two players call my bet and the player who limp goes all in for $310. When a player limp raises, their range is very strong and in this situation they usually have kings or aces. Sometimes they also have ace king, queens or even jacks, but definitely 90% of the times have a very strong hand like the ones I just mentioned. Anyway, I'm not going to fold my ace king and I call his all in. We saw our cards and I wasn't wrong. My opponent has kings. The dealer deals all 5 cards and they doesn't come, so I lose this hand. This time I'm dealt pocket 6s. A player bets $20 and I call, and two more players join the pot. The flop is 4-5-8 with 2 spades. The preflop raiser, the player who bet preflop, checks and I decide to make a $30 protection bet. All but one player folds. The turn is a 6, giving me a set of 6s, a great card for me and I decide to bet $100. Fortunately, my opponent doesn't fold and calls. The river is a king of diamonds and I bet again. The spades don't complete and now my opponent might not believe me and think I have a missed flush draw. Therefore, I bet $275 and the player, without much hesitation, calls and we take down this $1,000 pot. Now we are dealt king 8 of the same suit in MP2 and after a player limps, I bet 20. That player calls and we go heads up to the flop. The flop brings a board of 5, 6, 7 with 2 spades. This is what's called a very wet board where there are possibilities of straights and flush draw at the same time. With my straight draw with the 8, I make a continuation bet of $25 to try and get my opponent to fold a hand that would beat me like an ace high. The player doesn't fold and calls. The turn is a queen of spades, completing the flush. Here I decide to represent the flush and bet $70, but the player doesn't fold and calls. The river is a blank at deuce of hearts, and here I decide not to continue with my bluff. Fortunately, I didn't do it because the opponent had a flush with 7-8 of spades. We are dealt now 8-9 of diamonds. Several players limp, and I bet $30 from the big blind. Being in the big blind, I could also check and play this spot more passively, but I prefer to raise. Only one player calls. The flop is King, Jack, 8, Rainbow. The small blind checks, and I bet a small, $20. It's a board that favors my range since there are high cards, and I should bet to try and get my opponents to fold and win the pot. He doesn't fold and calls. The turn is a queen, and I continue bluffing. I bet $50, but he doesn't fold and calls again. The river is an ace, leaving the straight to one card. That's why I decide to represent that 10 and continue bluffing, hoping the player will fold. I bet if he doesn't have the 10, he folds his hand. But unfortunately, he called me super fast because he did have the 10. He had King 10, and this bluff didn't work out well. If you enjoyed the ride, hit that like button and subscribe for more hands, more strategy, and more live action. See you in the next one.